All right, here we go. Hey folks, welcome into the News 12 Now desk. Thanks for joining us here on this Friday, January 26th. We have made it to the end of the week here, and we are back talking sports on Fridays. It's been a little while since we've had a guest on, so we figured why not come back strong here. We have got Westside boys basketball coach Jerry Hunter joining us this morning, two-time defending 2A state champion, coming off a big win over Thompson in the region. Coach, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. Dan, I'll let you kind of get things started here.
Yeah, I mean, Nick, you just mentioned the game against Thompson. Any road to winning a state championship, getting back to Macon, and doing what you guys have had success doing in the past, there's always going to be tough games along the way. They're going to help bring the best out of your team. What did you see from your guys against Thompson at Thompson, picking up that huge win, knowing that they did get you guys right here in Augusta a few weeks ago?
Like I mentioned before, there was a little, I guess, uncertainty going into the environment. Right now, we only have like 2 playoff-proven guys on the team as far as time played and experience. So we treated that as a playoff game, an on-the-road playoff game, just to see their resilience and the understanding of the game plan. Our game plan was to control the boards, and they bought in. I mean, a lot of times now, guys leak out on defense trying to finish above the rim, of course, because that's what the crowd enjoys. But they bought into the game plan, and that was very important. So that was a bit of growth for us that night, but at the same time, we still have a long way to go.
And a big part of that, of being in those moments, getting used to those types of moments, is also being able to play when the crowd is going crazy, when you got to execute down the stretch, you got to get a defensive stop when it matters most, everything along those lines. What did you see from your guys specifically in the fourth quarter that helped you guys turn that game over? And especially DeMarco Middleton, who really helped give you guys a jolt on both sides of the ball.
Well, a lot of times, our practices are competitive naturally. However, you can't substitute for experience in terms of having an actual crowd there, especially a live crowd. Thompson clearly has one of the better crowds in the area, probably one of the better crowds in the state. Marco clearly understood. He's been trying to define his role. Of course, last year, he had guys around him that could score. So early on, he tried to become the scorer instead of getting other guys involved early. So just for him to understand the importance of maintaining, and we were able to rest him. I mean, Levante Iris stepped in and kept the offense going. And then Dontrell Jackson stepped in and guarded the ball well. So he was rested going towards the end of the fourth quarter, and it allowed him to be able to think. And one of the things we like to make sure the guys understand is that information is important, but application, being able to apply it, is what's going to get you over the hump. So he was able to apply some of the things that we went over with him and secured the ball, protected possessions, and hey, man, we were a few points better than Thompson.
And I believe DeMarco is the lone starter on this team this year from last year's team, right?
No, Goss was a starter as well, and he was on the floor. Xavier Goss.
That's right. Okay, cool. Yeah. I mean, so, specifically with those two guys, I know Xavier Goss does a lot with football as well, and, having a rivalry with Thompson from that standpoint too. But when you look at those two guys specifically, how do you think getting that experience last year in the state championship game, that whole playoff run, really helped change their perspective of how to approach their senior season and a season like this? You mentioned, lifting up all the players around them and finding ways to get other people involved and bring them up to that standard that you hold for your team.
Yeah, well, Goss, he's a little more animated at times, and a lot of times it's due to frustrations. We had to build him up until this point because his role had shifted early on in the season. Last year he was a starter. This year here, we brought him off the bench a little more, trying to get him to understand the importance of we're going to need toughness on the inside. And we couldn't afford for him to get in foul trouble early on because sometimes his emotions get the best of him. And I clearly get it. I tell him all the time, man, you're passionate about what you do, so your frustrations are going to show. But we try to teach and coach emotional intelligence. And a lot of times you got to model that as a coach. You can't be all over the place expecting your kids to be in the moment if you're in a different moment when the time comes when they make mistakes. So a lot of those guys who've been there, they're allowed to make a few more mistakes early on. But Goss, man, right now, with his presence alone, he's an inside-outside guy. He can guard a point guard or a center. So now his role has increased, and now he understands why we were bringing him off the bench early on versus him starting, because if he gets in foul trouble early on, there's a chance he's not in the game late. And every tough game that we've had this year, competitive-wise, he's always been on the floor the last quarter. Actually, whether we won or lost, he was on the floor.
And something I find interesting about that is, my high school team, we didn't really have anybody that was taller than maybe 6'3", 6'4" at the most. But we had a lot of people who could be that level of flexibility on defense and can do what you have to do to leak out on the break and really just run and get everything you want in transition after getting a key stop on defense. How much of a talking point is that for you, knowing that, everybody has to come together to be a part of something as great as what you've accomplished to this point, but also letting everyone know that everybody is a part of it in one way or another, but also finding that way to bring the best out of everybody in a specific role? Like, how much do you talk about that with your guys, knowing that, Rome wasn't built in a day and every team is different year in and year out?
Well, we kind of go with values and standards, and a lot of stuff that we do, we try to build them with their character off the court, knowing the importance of work ethic. I tell them all the time, a lot of kids now, they go to different trainers for specific things like shooting the ball, dribbling the basketball, okay? But very few go to get their work ethics developed. And whether you're a great shooter or not, your work ethic is going to determine how far you go with it or what your skill set does for you. So we try to tap into those work ethics, man. And they're high school kids. A lot of them don't understand work ethics. Right now, at one point in time, kids were required to get jobs while they were still in school, even if they were playing sports. Now everything is kind of more so of, we're going to support you. You don't have to work. And then they get that sense of entitlement. So we try to make them earn everything. And one of the things is, on this team here, you even have to earn your role, which simply means that just because you have a uniform, you're not just going to be out here running up and down the floor throwing the ball at the rim. You have to understand, if you're going to have to rebound tonight, that's your role. Roles are very important. I heard you mention that in what you said just now, but that's not only with basketball. It's with your job. It's with school systems. It's with society. So once they can identify with their role, and some don't, and the ones who don't, they tend to transfer. But fortunately, we've been able to win back-to-back championships where everybody understood their roles, and we had to get to that point this year. Now everybody have a sense and idea of what their role is. I mean, man, we got guys that can score double figures, but not everybody's going to be able to score double figures every night. Somebody has to get that 8 points and 8 rebounds. I mean, we lost a guy last year, averaged right at 15 to 16 rebounds a game. We don't have that this year, but we can get 3 guys to average 5. You still get 15 boards, but you have to understand going into the game. And fans don't cheer for rebounds, okay? They may cheer for a block shot. Fans don't cheer for turnovers. They tend to cheer for finishing above the rim and 3-point plays. And the kids, they want to be cheered for, like, a lot of attention too. But we try to get them to block out the noise, and more so important, don't become the noise, which simply means don't allow themselves to frustrate themselves.
And I think one of the things that I've noticed that's a little bit different about this year's team is, the length a little bit, and something that you can maybe hang your hat on a little bit more than past years, potentially, knowing the help that you do have on the inside and the flexibility that you do have a lot of guys who play that role now. In your eyes, what are the differences between this year's team and last year's team? And what does this team right now have to do to put yourself in a position to continue to compete for the region, knowing how tight it is at the top between you and Thompson, and then do what you have to do in the playoffs?
Last year's team, we kind of struggled with ball handling at times. Okay, and what I mean by that is when teams would deny Marco and force Omari to have to bring the ball down, which he didn't have a problem doing. However, our third guy, Jalix, his idea is if he gets the basketball, he's straight downhill. And a lot of times, when we're up, we got to run sets just to make sure we execute our game plan. This year, the teams here, they don't have the toughness that last year team has. Now, the one thing we have added is Levante Ivory. He brings that same toughness as Jalix did on defense. So that gives us a plus there. But late in the game, as you can see when we were at Thompson, DeMarco didn't have to guard the other team's point guard and bring the ball up the floor. Okay, so naturally, Dontrell Jackson could guard the other team's point guard. Ivory, he can guard the other team's 2 guards. So that kind of gives Marco a break at times, and he was able to finish with energy. That particular game there, I knew I had to get him out and to be able to finish. Last year, I wouldn't have been able to take him out of the game. He would have had to finish the game, which, you know, you get tired a few times. You may take a few bad shots. You're going to become lackadaisical on defense, but most so important, you don't think the same. So I think having energy to finish that game, man, was very important. But it came from his teammates picking up defense assignments for him, but also being able to execute our offense when he's off the ball.
Awesome. Nick?
Yeah, Coach, you've mentioned Marco a lot, and he's one guy I wanted to touch on here with you. So when I first came to a practice a couple years ago, this was back in, I guess, the first state championship run when you had J-Lex and Kalon and Amari. And I went in and I wanted to interview those three guys. And you said, oh, I want you to talk to this kid too, this sophomore, DeMarco. So you saw something in him early on in his high school career. What was it that you saw in him that early, and then now that it's sort of transitioned into his team, what have you seen from him now in his development as a leader?
Well, he's been a lot more vocal now. He was a shy guy then. When he came in, of course, you got Amari does a lot of talking, very articulate. Kalon is confident. You know, Jalix, he's shy, but, you know, once he gets to being Jalix, you know, he's very outspoken. Marco was he was that guy that was always quiet and shy. But when you throw the ball and put that in his hand, when you throw the ball out and put it in his hand, he's a different force. So all his confidence was with the basketball in his hand. So, you know, I was more so concerned then with developing him without the basketball in his hand. And now we've come to that point because he has to lead in the locker room. He has to lead during our film session. He has to lead as well as when we have our outings. Now, Xavier Goss helps him a lot. Levante Irish steps in and help him. But just having that sheer confidence of being able to disagree with your teammate. And a lot of times he has a problem with that because we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But I'm telling him we're not in the hurting anybody's feeling business. We're in the getting better business. And sometimes you got to have those candid conversations. And I think our game against Josie, at halftime, we didn't come in and talk X's and O's. We came in and had a very candid conversation. And it was concerning our pregame workout prior to that game. And I held him accountable for it. Of course, the team was looking at me a little different then because we didn't talk about what Josie did at halftime or what we did, but I went straight at him as well as the rest of the seniors. So just beginning him to become a little more vocal, man, was very important and was one of my concerns. But now he's beginning to talk a little more.
Yeah, getting on each other and having those hard conversations was not something you guys had a problem with when Amari and Kalon and J-Lex were there. Saw that in the state championship against Butler. But you mentioned working a little bit more with DeMarco, getting him off the ball. And when you bring in a guy like Levante Ivory, who at Thompson was touching the ball every possession, how do their games complement each other now in the backcourt that you have these two guys who are both able to work on ball and off ball?
Well, what makes it special about those two guys is their IQ. You know, at first, when Ivory came in, you know, a lot of folks was kind of wondering whether or not he was going to be able to coexist with Marco. And then, of course, it gets to that question, you know, can you coach both of those guys in the same environment? Well, I laugh at him because I tell him I coached Kalon Hudson and Amari Tillman together, and they had a relationship prior to me meeting them. And a lot of people ask me the same question about them. But my thing is that teaching the guys to understand their skill set. A lot of times now they're overcoached and undertaught, which basketball, you know, can get you caught up in coaching and not teaching. But teaching them how to be teammates was very important, and sharing the ball. And then you got Jarris Atkinson too. You know, he's a fan favorite because he's a highlight film. But then at the same time, you know, these guys here understand that just because you can play basketball, it doesn't mean you know how to win. So teaching them how to win together is important, and they're learning that, as you can see with that game against Thompson.
Yeah, I know Levante's a pretty level-headed kid, doesn't let the moment get too big. Had some great success at Thompson, though. Took them very far in the state tournament a couple years ago in that 3A. Did he say anything about this one feeling pretty good that he was able to get one over on his old squad?
Well, one of the things that I told him, you know, when they call the kid's name out, you know, they run out or whatever, shake the other coach's hand. Well, I shook his hand and I whispered in his ear, "Welcome home." You know, and he smiled. And the one thing that he knew was the crowd was going to be against him. He knew that the environment was going to be hostile. He knew a couple of his former teammates were going to be physical with him. So we talked about all that prior to getting into that environment, but we also told him listen, man, this game is not for you to go in here and try to prove something to those guys at Thompson. We're trying to become a better team tonight, and told him the things he's going to have to do, and he did them. I mean, right now, man, clearly he can score the ball, but he took on a big defense assignment when he guarded the kid from Thompson, and he wanted to go man. He was in the huddle. He said, "Coach, let's go man." I said, "Well, let's do it then," because anytime a team wants to play man, that means they're going to take on the responsibility and the mistakes of having each other's back. Because sometimes you have to help on defense, but more so important, if the helper is helping somebody, you have to help the helper as well, which is a teammate of yours.
Yeah, when I've always said I think Levante is one of the smoothest basketball players I've seen in this area. He's just like butter going up and down the floor. Really, really fun player to watch. You've had two really unique ways of defending a state championship now. Last year, you had almost the exact same squad as you did when you won the year before, especially with that core of Marco and Kalon, J-Lex, Amari, those guys. This year, almost an entirely new group. We mentioned it's the two returning starters. You transfer in Levante. How different is it, other than just the personnel is different? How has it been different for you guys in these two title defenses?
Well, this year here, and I'm glad you recognize that, because a lot of people don't understand this is a new team basically. Of course, you got your you got your DeMarcos and then Xavier as far as the guys who's bringing experience. But everybody else, they really don't have that playoff experience. So we try to treat every game now as though it's a playoff game, because we got guys like Javon Bobby Blackwell, right? He's exceptional. He's doing a lot better than he has been done in terms of at the beginning of the season. But then you have Jerry Stackinson, you have Aldrion Jones, you have Kiori Atwell. So we have a lot of young guys, man. And right now we try to make our practices as competitive as possible. Unfortunately, you can't substitute for experience. Whenever they let those bleachers out and the officials come in, a lot of that stuff we teach them in practice goes out of the window. So right now, I would say, in order for us to three-peat, man, it's going to be tougher than any one of those first two state championships. It's going to be tough because this is a new team.
Yeah, and they always say the next one is the hardest. And you guys had a target on your back last year. You certainly have a target on your back this year, having gone back-to-back. You've always, in the times that we've talked, the times that I've known you, you always seem to have a focus on player-led teams. You let your guys not necessarily get on each other, but have those candid conversations like you were talking about earlier, and you let the players kind of coach themselves to a degree. Was that something you had to learn as a coach? Did you ever have times when you tried to do maybe too much coaching and not let the guys take charge, and did that bite you? Like, is this something you picked up along the way? Where did this come from?
Well, it's kind of like being involved in practices. I treat practice like a classroom. And ultimately the games are the tests. I will make decisions throughout the game, but I try to get them to understand that there's going to be a time in life that you have to make certain decisions. And if I disagree with it, I'll let you know. But when it comes to playing the game and seeing the game how it's supposed to be played, you got to understand the game within the game. What's important to me is that they're able to recognize mismatches. They're able to recognize opportunities. But more so important is just because you can shoot the ball, you got to understand shot selection. And a lot of hype now comes hype whenever the social media is involved, man. And a lot of time these guys they're showing me stuff on social media. So we created a IG page, Instagram page. I had Coach Taylor do that because I'm not really into it. And matter of fact, I didn't know that Thompson was #1 and we were #2 when we were playing, because I'm locked into teaching them and developing them and keeping them emotionally stable. They knew it, but I didn't. Matter of fact, I didn't know it until Nick mentioned it on the news reel that I saw that night. I was like, whoa, we were #2 in the state, because at the beginning they were mentioning Columbia and all this, and I'm like, man, we'll focus on the next game. So I try to get them to understand there's no such thing as a big game. It's only the next game, because if you start focusing on big games, you're going to look past your next game. All right, and your big game may be 3 games down the road, but you don't understand your next game could cost you an opportunity and won't turn that into a big game anymore. It'll be just another game. So just allowing them, man, the freedom to make mistakes, but also, man, as long as they're unselfish, okay, whatever they do, then I'm kind of cool with it because they're kids and they're going to make mistakes and you learn from mistakes. But when they become being selfish, I got a problem with that now.
Yeah. You talk about big games and trying to keep focus on the next game. Does it help that every game is kind of a big game on your schedule? I mean, you got Butler, you've got Thompson, you had Gray Collegiate on your schedule. I mean, you guys are just in a heavyweight fight just about every game down there in 2A. Does that help a little bit? One, get these guys to in the mindset that every game is a big game, but then two, when the single elimination games come around, whether it's the region or state, these guys are ready.
Oh yes. It's interesting how our schedule unfolded this year because we had to make a few changes. Gray came along after we won a few games, and then we played McDonald, and then of course Butler, Thompson, those games. So our thing, man, is that you're right. Every next game is a big game, but as far as preparation goes, it's like tonight we have Putnam. We prepared the same way for this game that we prepared for Thompson, because if you don't do that with kids, man, they'll look past the next game. And if you don't practice it hard, if you don't lift the weights, if you don't do your strength and conditioning, they'll begin to think, oh, this is just such and such coming in tonight. And then, of course, that's the night that hiccup starts. And we had a few off the court issues this year. We overcame them. The game we lost against Thompson, I told those guys, when we lost against Thompson the first time, I was telling them, man, this game here we lost, we can't afford to lose the locker room. And but we band together, got through those off the court issues, man, and then moved forward.
Yeah. Dan, did you have anything?
Yeah, so two things. You mentioned, playing with a level head and being in the moment and not letting your emotions get the best of you in certain times. When I was editing the highlights the other night, one thing that I really noticed that I thought was awesome was every time that DeMarco went to the rim, kissed the ball off the glass, got a steal, got an M1, hit a fadeaway jumper off the glass, there was a defensive stop. You could feel the emotion. You could see the emotion. Every time DeMarco was mean mugging coming down the court, doing his thing, and it was just to see that level of emotion and passion and pride, not only for playing in a big game like that, but for what they do and the level of effort that goes into putting yourself in this position. How much as a coach do you lean into that, knowing how much it means to them to get the job done, to do what they have to do? Because you can tell that every dribble, every drive, and every shot, there's something on the line with this group, and it's really fun to watch at least from a reporter standpoint.
Yes, sir. And I'm a little more excited when they get defensive stops actually than when someone gets a dunk. And they'll always ask, Coach, why you don't cheer, when the dunk? I'm like, man, my thing is getting back on defense after you dunk. That's what I'm cheering for. Okay, so they'll understand that it's okay to feel good. It's just not time to celebrate. And just to watch Marco take over at that point, man, to go score the ball and then get back and come up with a big steal, and then realizing that he had the energy to understand anticipation. We got this anticipation drill that we do every day, and I saw him apply it to those situations. So you're absolutely correct. And as far as them feeling good, I try to make sure they understand, as long as there's time on the clock, the game is not over. In the locker room, I look at them celebrating. They're, of course, kids, and I just try to make sure they understand it's okay to feel good. It's just not time to celebrate. I say when it's time to celebrate, we will. But it's on to the next game now.
Yeah, and final thing for me for now. People know I grew up in New York. I came down here about a year and a half ago now. And one of the things that was interesting for me is I really grew up in a very heavy basketball culture atmosphere at my school. My senior year, both our boys and girls basketball teams went to the state Final Four in the same year, which is insane. And one thing I really have an appreciation for Augusta is the basketball culture and knowing how many schools are talented, how everybody pushes each other from around the area. A lot of players and coaches know each other because of that basketball family that comes along with being here in this area. If you had to explain what some of the best parts about Augusta basketball from all the different schools is and what helps make Augusta as good at basketball as it's been in recent years specifically, how would you explain it?
I think the coaches have kind of bought into the situation. This select group of coaches have bought into teaching the game. All right. The toughness, of course, the area requires them to be tough coming up through middle school, high school. They're competitive along the way. Our thing was just making sure that the out of town areas respected Augusta. We understood that, the teams in Augusta were going to compete against each other. When I came into this position here, it's like the guys wanted to be the best team in Augusta. And I was like, well, why settle for being the tallest midget? So we kind of got out of that way of thinking, should I say it, and started challenging teams outside of Augusta. And fortunately, it brought us some success. But then what's most so important, man, is making sure the guy understands that mistakes are to be made. And a lot of them always see themselves making the game-winning shot. But I ask questions to them like this: look, would you rather miss a game-winning shot or a game-winning free throw? And that's kind of like, you're a baseball guy, Dan. It's like, would you rather look at strike 3 or swing at ball 4? So just putting them in that mindset, because no one envisions themselves, right, missing the game-winning shot. Okay, no one envisions themselves missing the game-winning free throw. But you have to put that in their minds, because, when it comes to baseball, looking at strike 3 doesn't give you a chance. Okay, well, swinging at ball 4 does. Okay, but if you look at ball 4, you're on base, so you only get a split second sometime to make those decisions. So you have to make sure you understand that the good times are going to come, but unfortunately, there's going to be a few bad times. So it's what you put into this off the court, as far as your work ethic, that's going to determine whether or not you're going to be successful, because you can hit ball 4. You actually can. You can hit ball 4, but you can't hit ball 4 if you don't. But you can't hit strike 3 if you don't swing the bat. So when you get to that free throw line, guys, let's go possessions. Okay, if we're up 4 possessions and one more possession, 1 point of stretches and give us 5 possessions, then you don't need to make 2 of them free throws. And when you miss one, don't worry about it. Make the next one. We'll still go up 1 possession. Because if you make both free throws, we're only going to get a game 1 possession anyway. We're only going to gain 1 possession anyway. So make sure you hit 1 out of 2. So what it does is it allows them room to make mistakes, but also the importance of, if I miss one, I know I have to make the next one, because how many points you up and how many possessions you up sometimes make the difference.
Awesome, Coach. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Got multi-sports in there too. It's not quite baseball season yet, Coach. I like the analogy, but we still got a little bit. We got to get through basketball season here first. But you guys are riding high right now, 7 wins in a row, including a big one over Thompson on Tuesday. We appreciate the time this morning, as always, Coach. Good luck the rest of the way, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you guys in region and hopefully pretty deep in state as well.
Hey, man, thanks for your time and including us in your story.
Absolutely, guys. Have a good one.
Coach, talk to you soon.
Okay, man. See you soon, Dan.
Jerry Hunter there, always great to talk to. We appreciate his time coming on. Again, back-to-back 2A state champions in the GHSA. First to win back-to-back in 2A since back in 2013-14, I believe. So it's been a little while. They're in some rare air winning back-to-back state titles. So appreciate his time as always. And folks, we appreciate you joining us as well. We're going to wrap things up here. We've got midday coming up at the top of the hour. And then I won't see you the rest of the day. So have a great weekend. See you back here on Monday for Top Headlines.